Thank you, Lisa, and good morning. I loved Yassi's story, and I have to say, in spite of being a tech futurist, the Amazon jungle is my favorite place in the whole world. It's where I go to unwind, disconnected from communications and electricity for 4 to 6 weeks at a time. It is life-changing. But all of us are about to go through some really life-changing experiences. Society is about to change in a massive way. We have geopolitical events unfolding, the likes of which perhaps we haven't even seen in centuries. I just got back from America a couple of days ago, and I have never seen people so divided over politics. I'm a dual citizen, grew up in America, been here for more than 20 years, and families are really at war with each other over political issues. It's incredible. We also have things like climate change happening, and you can argue whether it's human-made or a cycle that happens in our planet. I think it's probably both, but it's happening, and it's a reality. We also have massive population growth. Demographers estimate that by the year 2050, we'll have 9.7 billion people living on this planet Earth. And then, of course, there's technology and the rapid pace of change that Michael so eloquently talked about earlier today. Mix that up with advances in medical research, and we're on the cusp of us humans living perhaps radically longer lives than we have ever imagined. But there's a disconnect between what people think is going to happen and what is really happening. All over the world, think tanks are saying that anywhere from 30 to 50% of jobs are going to disappear in the next 10 to 15 years. In 2015, CETA came out with a report here that predicted that up to 40% of Australians, 5 million people, would lose their jobs in a 10 to 15 year period because of automation. And that's just one study. Yet, if you do studies of what people think will happen, you get a completely different result. Last year, Randstad did a study here in Australia, and 84% of Australians thought that their job would not be impacted by automation. In the US, Pew Research did a similar study, and 80% of Americans thought that their jobs would be unchanged or substantially unchanged for a period of 50 years. I mean, come on, 50 years, that's nuts. But this same group of people, 2/3 of them thought that somebody else's job would be taken over by a robot. So not me, but you and you. Not going to happen. Why is there this disconnect? And I think it's because of what Michael was talking about earlier. It's this massive acceleration and our inability to keep pace with it. But I don't believe in doom and gloom. A lot of where I've been putting my research into jobs of the future, and believe me, there are going to be a lot of them, but we have to prepare ourselves because things are happening very rapidly. So let's talk a little bit about some of the technologies that are going to change our world. And if I had to pick one, it would be artificial intelligence. I think AI is going to impact every single person in this world and every single business in this world in some form or another. And you may think AI is this new technology, but really it's been around since 1956. And by the way, when I use the term AI, I'm using it as a big umbrella term. It means a lot of different things. Newer technologies like machine learning and deep learning, but also computer vision and voice recognition and natural language processing and chatbots and digital assistants and driverless cars and smart robots and a whole lot more. I could talk about AI all day, but I promise I won't. Let me just give you a couple of examples. There's a group in Cambridge University, mathematicians, that put some really good use to AI to help detect fraud in financial activity. Now, one of the things that AI is great at is in taking massive data sets and analyzing them very quickly for pattern recognition. And what they designed is an AI called ARIC that is able to detect anomalies in patterns. So all of us, as we're transacting with sites like our banking websites, have different ways that we interact and use that website. ARIC is able to pick up very subtle changes in the way that individual users interact with the website and raise a fraud alert in real time. But then there's the dark side of AI. How many of you have heard of a term called deep fake? Raise your hand, anybody? Yep, a couple of people. It's a montage of the word fake news and deep learning, which is an AI technique. And what people are able to do now is to take a video image, in this case of Alec Baldwin doing a Saturday Night Live imitation of President Donald Trump, and superimpose through AI and computer technology an image of the real Donald Trump. Not only that, but there's software that allows you to take transcripts of text and literally change the words that someone says and have it come out in their own voice. So you can end up with a video that looks and sounds like somebody, and it's not them. Imagine if you saw a video of President Donald Trump saying, hey, I met with the Queen of England about a month ago, and I've decided I'm going to establish a royal dynasty in America, starting with my family. Well, maybe that's not such a good example. You might believe that one. But imagine it was the CEO of your company who was admitting to crime or to a privacy breach or something else. It can be really scary. But luckily, we can use AI to help us here too. That same pattern recognition can be used to pick out fake videos, because all of us have gestures that we as humans use, and AI is able to pick that out. Another technology that might be used is blockchain, to be able to check the provenance of the cameras that did the filming. If it turns out that the camera was based in somebody's basement in the Ukraine, you can bet that's not the real Donald Trump. We're also going to see lots of robots, and robots are actually a physical instantiation of AI. This picture was taken in the Shenzhen airport in September 2016. In China, they are rolling out police robots that are mobile and they have facial recognition. Now, this robot reminds me of something. Does it remind anyone in the audience? Just call it out. Does it remind you of any robots? Wait, say it again. You got it. As soon as I saw it, I saw Dalek. Can you imagine somebody who has a facial structure similar to a known criminal and that there's a mistake? And by the way, it happens a lot of times with facial recognition, and suddenly you've got this exterminate, exterminate, exterminate. Oh my gosh. We've got to be really careful with how we deploy robot and facial recognition and how we actually add that human factor in and human judgment into how we use technology. But we can use robots for lots of great purposes too. In the medical arena, telepresence is fantastic. This one, Beam Pro, I learned to use in all of 30 seconds. This cute little harp seal, it looks like a stuffed animal, but it's actually a robot that is designed to help people with dementia or Alzheimer's with social isolation. It's like a pet that you don't have to do anything that is outside of your capabilities. So you play with it and it starts to learn your patterns and how you like to talk to it and when you think it's being bad. And the good thing about it is you don't have to feed it, you don't have to walk it, and you don't have to pick up its poo. There's also surgical robots like the Da Vinci robot that's being used in hospitals all around Australia. And it helps with lessening bleeding, lessening scar tissue, and getting people out of hospital a lot faster with quicker recovery rates. The downside is that operations are still fairly expensive, up to about $30,000 per operation. Robots are fantastic in the agriculture world. These robots are from the Australian Centre for Field Research, or Field Robotics. It's based out of the University of Sydney, and over here we have shrimp and then mantis and then the little flying robot, a drone. They have sensors on them that are able to pick up moisture levels, fertilizer chemicals, nutrients, pests, all sorts of things. Other robots are able to do harvesting and weed picking and count flower buds and estimate the crop cycles. But I think because there are so many small agricultural businesses that the real opportunity here is to have a service, robots as a service. Australia is ripe for the picking. We have some of the best robotic labs in the world in the field of agriculture, and we have a big farming community that can make great use of this technology. So let's talk about robots and jobs for a second. And when I use the term robots, I'm talking about softbots, AI as well. When it comes to looking at automating your workforce, there are a number of things that you need to look at. First is technical feasibility, either now or in the immediate future. Next is the cost of technology, your return on investment. You also need to look at people and skills. Are those skills and people scarce, or are they readily available? And also, what is the cost of labor? But then there's the regulatory side. Michael showed us this great video of driverless cars, but can you imagine if laws were enacted in Australia that said it's illegal to have a driverless car on any road in Australia? Well, first of all, in 10 years, you wouldn't be able to buy a car. But what if we had the opposite, where we had highways with lanes dedicated to driverless vehicles? You'd see a much faster uptake. And then there's also the social acceptance side of things. And in science fiction, we have examples of societies in the future where we have everything from robot bashing to people who fall in love and marry humanoid type of robots. So there's a lot to consider. There will be lots and lots of new jobs of the future. One of the very first ones that I think we're going to see is an AI trainer. Now, as AIs build their databases, they're building these really big neural networks, but they sometimes do some very unexpected things. Last year, OpenAI, a research think tank, used deep learning to have an AI teach itself a video game called Coast Runner. And the point of the game was to cross the finish line with the most points possible. And the points were these little green widgets that just pop up. But the AI went stir crazy. It just went around and around trying to get these green widgets. It crashed into walls, it crashed into other bots, and it did everything except cross the finish line. Ultra-competitive AI. Well, what researchers have determined is that we need to put in hooks for reinforcement learning that is done by humans to be able to treat or teach AIs to behave in the way that we want them to behave. And this is going to be one of the big new jobs of the future. Human resources, or HR, is going to change radically in the coming years. So right now, it's responsibility for humans. In the very near future, it will be the head of robotic and human orchestration. And that will involve deciding, where do you use real people, where do you use AI-based software, and where do you use physical robots? But it's actually a lot more than that. It's about transforming your company to be able to use technology and adopt agilely. And that's a key word. So many businesses today rely on business cases that take 6 to 12 months to go through approval processes. If you do that, you will be one of those slides that Michael showed that is out of business. And another and last job that I'll talk about, and there's many, many more that I would love to mention, but this is an important one, is the chief ethics officer, the other CEO in a company. Because as it turns out, one of the dirty little secrets of AI is that as these AI neural networks get bigger and bigger and bigger, the researchers who design them have less and less of a view and an idea of how an AI makes decisions. There's a great example that came out of the United States of an AI that was being used in the criminal justice system, and it was looking at people applying for parole and determining whether or not parole should be granted based on whether there was a likelihood of them recommitting a crime. And what was found out in an audit was that it was being very lenient towards white parolees and a lot less lenient towards non-white parolees. And the researchers were baffled. 137 inputs were fed in, and none of them had to do with race or ethnicity or anything similar. I have a hypothesis. I think what probably happened is that the AI read through all the documentation that follows a criminal through his or her career path, and it picked up on the unconscious social biases that were written into these reports, and that's what it used to make its decisions. Inevitably, when people ask me about AI, they say, how smart can it really get? And I would say, I will not put an upper limit on how smart it can get. At a conference of AI researchers last year, half of them thought that AI could reach human-level intelligence by 2040 to 2050. If you go out to the year 2075, then 90% of the AI researchers thought that was possible. Is that doom and gloom for humans? No. There will be a lot of new jobs, but there are things that we have to do to be able to transform our companies. And the very first thing is understanding technology that's available now and in the immediate future. Next, we need to work with our people, not top down, but bottom up all the way through the top. And let your staff help you identify the things that are boring and repetitive that they do in their lives that would make their jobs much more interesting if it could be automated. That's where you start to apply these technology and you use your human capital for the things that they're great at, not the boring tasks that can be automated. Next, you need to also do a very comprehensive assessment of people's skills and talents and personalities. And then you need to look at jobs of the future. And that's where people like me come in, because if you don't know what kind of jobs are going to be out there, how do you go about figuring out how to transform your workforce? So the next step is actually matrixing in people's skills and talents and personalities with all of these new jobs of the future to figure out who might fit where. And then the last thing, and this is the most important bit, and that is to start reskilling people. And even if they end up leaving your company for another firm, it's really important. And I think corporations have a very big role to play here. Let's face it, if we end up with a society with 40% of people out of work, there's not going to be anybody to buy your products. The future is what we make it. It's up to all of us, and I think we can have a bright future. Thank you very much.